Hello and welcome back to the MMA Split podcast. I'm James Matt, joined as always by our official producer now, Josh, as we are back on Zoom, unfortunately, due to we swear to God, the last little things that are preventing us from 1080 HD quality. My theory is that we're trying to use OBS and it's prioritizing our picture quality, but maybe just stretching that Wi-Fi on the audio side a little bit too far. We have a solution. We think we know what the problem is. Still going to work at it, and I will find a backup no matter what if this does not work out the way we want it to. We're back on Zoom as an emergency option. It will for too much longer, but we are still using OBS to screen capture. So Josh is still maintaining his role as official producer, and we certainly can't let some technology stop us because we have got an action-packed weekend of fights to talk about. There's UFC, there was PFL, there was boxing, there was a historic night at Madison Square Garden, and there was a great reminder that you can't always look at the strength of the card for big name value to decide if it's going to be a good card or not, because I would say this is at least up there. I mean, it's right up there with UFC London and UFC Columbus for me in terms of entertainment value. And it didn't have nearly the kind of name value that those two fight night cards had. We got a lot to talk about. We might as well start with our main event. Marlon Chito Vera was taking on Rob Font. I would like to point out that we made our picks for Rob Font to win before he missed weight.
Yeah.
Didn't seem to be affecting him, but he ends up winning. I'd say, 21 of a 25-minute fight. Rob Font clearly wins comfortably. And yet you cannot believe that he clearly lost 4 of the 5 rounds. It was insane.
And in 3 of those rounds, it was really only the last 20 seconds of each round that he lost. However, no argument, lost those rounds.
He lost them.
Yeah.
Almost finished in every single round after the first. It is fucking insane. Chito Vera, I'll say this, we might not have got the fight correct, but what we said in our breakdown and predictions is Rob Font lands in volume and wins points and wins rounds. And Chito Vera is viciously looking to try and land some finish the fight at all times. And you really that... And a great example in MMA of how it's not just a numbers game. You can land all the strikes in the world, but it only takes that one incisive, perfectly placed, perfectly timed, damaging shot, and it completely changes the entire fight. And, I mean, the similarities between this and Rob Font's fight against Aldo are terrifying. It's like the first round against Aldo happened 4 times in a row. Josh, what was your mind going through?
I don't see it being the same, and I'm not saying that it was the difference, and this is why Rob Font hasn't been able to get past Chito Vera. But that botched weight cut clearly had a big effect on him. That interview afterwards with Megan Levy, he sounded worse than Miguel on coke. He was just in a bad fucking way, and he came out fighting like a guy that needed to get like a first or second round finish. I do not know how he maintained that pace throughout 25 minutes. So much respect for both guys, but Jesus Christ, I don't know how Rob Font bounced back from that and was able to maintain that pace for 25 minutes. But clearly, it did mean that he was a little slow, a little sloppy, and when he got caught, he was really fucking feeling it, and he was wearing those shots, and it really amounted to, if everything goes well and he's properly rehydrated and he hasn't killed himself, does he lose all of those rounds in the last 20 seconds? Does he keep a couple of them? You know, does he eat that shot better? Does he not go down? Does he not get followed? You know,
I think the shots still land. The question for me is, do they have the effect on him? And that's a hard question to answer, because what I would say, I know that it's not the same as Aldo, because with Aldo, that first round where he looks great, gets rocked at the end of it, and then really after that, it was Aldo's momentum. consistently in those rounds afterwards. Whereas in this fight, every single time it reset, I mean, really, if you were to look at this and say, who is the better, more technical striker? I still feel like it's Rob Font. That jab, the uppercut, where he was using the jab to set up the uppercut, the movement. There were so many things he did that just looked fucking fantastic. He looked so sharp. He looked so... But in the end, it didn't matter. I don't know if every shot puts him down in the same way. I think the hook kick, I think the kick he landed in the last round, the way it knocked him, it didn't look like it was that kind of like big shot, you know, it was going to put anyone down. It looked like it hit him and there was kind of like a pause and then he went down. But the one thing I'd have to say, I really don't want to take too much of credit away from Chito Vera, is for all the strikes that Rob landed, it's difficult to kind of judge this when you're watching live, but I don't know how many landed that clean. Because one thing about Chito, man, is his guard is fucking good. His distance is really good. And I think that, you know, whether or not the shot would have affected him so much, there is an issue. If there is one issue with Rob that is like massively held him back in these last two really fights to kind of push him into that next level, it's just being a little bit more defensively responsible, you know. And I've seen two fights now where he's just getting caught with these very well timed, powerful strikes.
Different though. The Aldo fight, he made mistakes and he got caught chasing losses from like the first sort of round on. You know, he's fighting a little too desperate. He's not fighting his fight. Totally different kind of performance. Against Chito, this is a guy that's fucking killed himself, missed weight, has come in trying to put him away early, failed to do that, and is just desperately maintaining the pace. And is, you know, making mistakes because he's really fucking trying to put it on him and survive the best way he can, which is just pure offense and volume. I think he did a much better job defensively than he did in the Aldo fight. Again, Chito, though, is going to take what he's given. I don't know necessarily that if Rob Font has the perfect weight cut, comes in fighting like, you know, at peak athletic performance, that he necessarily is going to beat Chito in the same fight, because Chito is going to fight a little differently. You know, once he gets to the end of the fourth, Chito knows he's got 3 rounds in the bag. Everybody knows he's got 3 rounds in the bag. So, yeah. Still a great fight. Still a great fight. A little disappointing in Rob. Never missed weight before. I'd like to believe he really fucking killed himself to get that close. But that's 3.5 pounds off championship weight. If you've got a number like 5 next to your name, you need to be ready to make championship weight really kind of at a moment's notice. So that's not good.
It's a shame for it. It's a shame. And I talk about the good things about it, because I don't want this just to be kind of viewed as, oh, well, Rob Font had a bad weight cut and that was... For Chito to stay calm when every round is going as badly as it is, for as long as it is, and have that belief that he can land something incisive, I thought was impressive. And defensively, man, the guy just does clean. He is so defensively responsible. God is so good. And yeah, it's a tricky style to have. It's not necessarily a judge favourable style, because you're not always going to land that incisive shot that puts the guy down. But you look at the two guys afterwards. You know, Rob Font landed, I think, 150 more strikes. There's barely a mark on Chito, and I think so much of that is that God is so good. I mean, I know that you kind of don't want to make too comparison between the Aldo fight and the Chito fight for Rob Font, but in both of these guys, he's dealing with somebody that knows how to guard and block and be patient and look for moments. And I think he deserves a huge credit for that. Not to mention the creativity of this. I mean, he put him down with a left hook, a flying knee, a hook kick, and a side kick, if I'm not mistaken. 4 different strikes, 4 different angles, all thrown at the perfect moment. And he captured those moments exactly when he needed to, and he's come to move up. And I think he deserves a huge credit for that. Not to mention the creativity of this. I mean, he put him down with a left hook, a flying knee, a hook kick, and a side kick, 4 different strikes, 4 different angles, all thrown at the perfect moment. And he come move up. barely a mark on the guy. Could probably fight in 3 months. So it's nothing but credit to Chito Vera. I thought he, from a mentality standpoint, or from a counter-striking standpoint, I suppose, a creativity, a variety standpoint, I just thought there was so much to love about what he did.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Jason Perillo, Chito Vera, in a lot of ways, sky's the limit. And what he lacks in kind of elite athleticism in terms of being able to counter strike, he more than makes up for with such an effective guard, like you say. He does know how to kind of stand in the pocket and wait for the perfect moment to kind of strike. And I would love to see him go up against O'Malley again at some point to see if he can still be as effective against the guy as fast and as long as O'Malley, because there's that part of me that thinks that it's the perfect way to nullify these really kind of effective rangy strikers.
I think I'm really starting to appreciate with Cheeto that May didn't used to give him credit for is I think he could be. He's not that he likes it, but I think he's comfortable with not. He doesn't feel like he needs to win every single moment of the fight, and he doesn't seem to get negatively affected by things not going in his way. So you look at that Sean O'Malley fight. I know it was ended in the first round, but the first 2.5 minutes until he landed that kick wasn't looking good for him. Nobody was looking at it going, "Oh, Cheeto's well here." You know, Sean O'Malley looked fucking excellent. And Frankie Edgar, I think you and I both had him 2 rounds up before he got knocked out. And with Rob Font, we've just talked about how great Rob Font was looking for the majority of this fight. So it's happened. I've seen that too many times now against decent opposition for me to go, he's getting lucky.
Yeah.
There's a method to the madness there, and he knows what he's doing. And it does make me think that against somebody like Sean O'Malley, Sean's probably win the majority of those rounds. But that's not going to get Cheeto down, and he doesn't need to win the whole fight. He only needs to win the key moments and make it count. And I think a guy like, as long as he can believe in himself and have that confidence that this moment will come, is always going to be. And, I think Rob, I feel, did get, not disheartened, but the level of aggression and carelessness he showed at least 2 rounds when he got caught. Some of that's got to come from a frustration of like, Jesus fucking God, do I have to land on this guy just to annoy him? Just to deter him? Like, fuck hurting him at this point. That doesn't seem to be happening. Just something that aggravates him at the very least. It just didn't seem to happen.
I don't know. Honestly, I think he was just kind of going for that volume. You know, just 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1. Just, if he's fighting his perfect fight, and I think he was nowhere near his best. He's at about 70% for me right there in that fight, and I have no idea how he got to the end of it. I have no idea. So much respect for the toughness of Rob Font. Pretty disappointed in the weight miss. Jesus fucking Christ. But I don't think he's really going to look. I think once he gets past the second round, Rob Font must just be thinking, like, just keep fucking hitting him and winning this fight and do it fighting how you can fight and just keep the pressure on. But he's kind of, getting a little desperate in trying to clearly win a round, maybe try and get a 10-8 just on volume, but I don't think he's necessarily after that point trying to throw haymakers. It's not really kind of what I thought he was trying to keep the jab fast and long, and that's where he kind of left himself overextended at moments, and frankly it was just an inability to continue moving.
So the uppercuts he was ripping, man, he was ripping those uppercuts.
Yeah, actually, the body work with the uppercuts and the uppercuts to the head were very nice.
The thing is that, like, okay, maybe he's throwing volume. But Jesus fucking Christ, Max throws volumes, and guys look like they've been fucking hit by a fucking afterwards. Okay, I've seen Rob Font make guys. He made Cody Garbrandt look like he'd been hit by a fucking train, and he was throwing with volume. The fact that he landed, 222 head strikes or something like that? Some fucking crazy number. I don't care if you're throwing in volume. If you land 200 plus head strikes against a guy, and he does not have a mark on him, you've got to give some serious credit to that guy's defense. because
Yeah.
it's not just that the shots are landing volume; they're not landing clean. Um, and also, just a great example of how numbers don't win fights. If you showed somebody the CompuBox stats at the end of this fight without showing them the fight and told them that Chito Vera won it very comfortably 4 rounds to 1, a lot of people would find that hard to believe. But this is fighting; it's how it goes. Moments define fights. And for Rob, this is a step back. For Chito, it's a step forward. I still think both guys are going to have great fights ahead of them, great fights next. Because, little talking for you, I didn't realize this until I saw Chael Sonnen talking about it. There are 8 former or current champions across 3 weight classes that all are currently in the top 15 at bantamweight.
Shit.
Fucking.
And Cejudo is trying to put himself in the mix.
Sorry, my apologies. It's 8 including Cejudo. So 7 of the current top 15, but if you chuck Cejudo in, he'd be the 8th. Because you've got Sterling, Yan, Cejudo, TJ, Oberant, Cruz, O, and there's one more
Edgar.
that I'm not thinking. Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar. Across 4 classes, all in one division. How fucking nuts is that?
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of that is Frankie Edgar.
No, yeah, true. But Aldo gives you featherweight, Cejudo gives you flyweight.
Yeah. But Frankie at 55, no one can convince you that's not the most impressive.
Oh, mate, that's
the cool one in my mind.
A miracle. Gray Maynard must have had at least 30 pounds of on fight night in the cage. Fights 2 and 3. Because he cut a lot of weight for those fights, man.
Yeah, I don't know how much the actual weight difference was, but how much of that was like real functional lean muscle, the difference there, A lot of people would say that Frankie would fight at 35 all of his career if it had been available in the UFC.
Well, I suppose we'll never know. But only makes his lightweight title run even more legendary. Let's move away from this. Just touched on, say, the other, just talking about the bantamweight division. Even if you look at the guys in the top 15 that aren't champions, you still have Dashvili, Font, Vera. This division is fucking mental. Killers. Absolute killers. Arguably maybe the most stacked division currently. And Chito Vera is going to be fighting one of those top 5 killers next. Let's talk about the Macomb.
So I was just going to jump in. I think Merab's the only person that's beaten Rufian Stutz, the Bellator bantamweight or interim bantamweight champion.
Interim champion.
I believe I'm right there. I need Sly to bring these things up for me.
That's kind of weird though, because if he ends up winning the Grand Prix slots, he will have defended his bantamweight interim bantamweight title twice.
Yeah, and
he'll
then
have more defenses,
and then he'll be on track to fight his training partner.
Yeah, and he would have more title defenses as the interim champion than the undisputed champion has.
Yeah.
Fucking crazy.
Bellator can do what they like.
You should watch Bellator. It's a little bit nuts. Does its own thing. It's great. Only problem with Bellator is it has a horrible tendency for it to anticlimactically deliver on its biggest nights.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how to think about it. You're talking about AJ, Pitbull 1. It's still fun. And then the second one, like, goes the distance, but I've hyped it up so much no one can really enjoy it. Yeah.
Did I send you Tom's meme about if Bellator was a spliff?
No. But you did tell me you were done trolling, so I'm glad that this is making a comeback.
Yeah, he sent me a meme after I told him about he should watch Bellator and the AJ Mickey 2 Fight Night card happened. He literally just sent me back a meme, which is that if Bellator was a spliff, it was just an open Rizzler filled with nothing but seeds and branches.
That's not
Little
really,
hush.
not really fair. So, yeah, a little harsh.
Little hush.
Probably very
We
harsh.
digress.
Like it.
Let's talk about some of these other fights. Good ones. We had some close ones. We had one controversial one in our co-main. The legend himself, Andrei Arlovsky, returned yet again to fight another young up-and-coming guy, Jake Collier. Every other time that we've seen these fights, Arlovsky's either been soundly beaten by an absolute young rising star, or he's been able to slow the fight at his pace, on his terms, and win it on decision. He was not able to do this in this fight. I thought Collier did a really good job of pressuring him, mixed something. I thought Collier had a really good fight. I thought Collier won this fight, and I picked Arlovsky to win this fight. So that's not me to say. I love Arlovsky. It's great to see him win. I just don't think he won this one.
How did you have it?
At best, 29-28 Collier. Like, yeah, I could argument for 30-27.
So, every round, I'm like, this should be very hard to score. But I was leaning Collier. I thought probably every round maybe give Andre the second, but I don't think so. Anyway, it's not a robbery. I don't feel bad about it. Wouldn't necessarily say controversial. I think he kept it close. That's Collier's fault as much as it is the judges. So
Yeah.
yeah, we went. Jake. Jake should have been fighting with the idea that he needed the finish, because Andre is smart enough to make this a close fight if it goes the distance. I thought he might be able to find a way to get him down and sink in another sneaky submission, but got a little too much of that Icarus thing. I flew too close to the sun with my picks there, Matt. Didn't do well this week.
Arlovsky landed a lot to the head. I felt like Collier was mixing things up a little bit. Sometimes that can get lost in the paint a bit. You know, head strikes can be an easy thing to kind of add and match head, but and just the fact that Arlovsky is 43 and he's still competing with these younger, up-and-coming heavyweights is a testament to itself. And that puts him on, I think he's one fight behind Jim Miller in terms of most UFC appearances. And I think he's made for the most number of wins. So, not bad for a guy that wasn't in the UFC for 6 years. In the middle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He just keeps rolling back the years. It's ridiculous, to be honest.
Is he 4 decades in MMA? Was he in 1999 that he made his MMA debut? I feel like it was.
Shit, maybe. I'll bring it up, but either way, good performance from both guys. Another fun fight. It's made for it was a whole card of fun nights.
Yeah, really hard to find an absolute standout. Certainly, I'd say performance of the night has to be to the feature fight. We predicted Andre Touchy-Feely to do what Andre Touchy-Feely does, and he got out faster than I think he's ever been finished. And this is a guy who's got a reputation of being hard to finish, tough, good chin. And I'll be fair, he was not unconscious, but that fight was stopped at the perfect time. He was in trouble. Brito was all over him. And hey man, when I thought, that's fucking sloppy, man. You've got caught throwing the check left, being hit with the fucking overhand right. That's poor. And then I watched it in real time again, and it was fucking fast that I don't even think he had time to process it. After he'd been punched. It was just rapid. Brito's a beast. Didn't know who he was before. I know who he fucking is now.
Yeah, man. Burrito's no joke. By the way, yeah, Arlovsky's first professional fight 1999.
Wins across
Unbelievable.
4 fucking decades in MMA.
No,
That is
he lost his first fight. So,
ah.
he, but he has fought across 4 decades.
Four across 4 decades. I will still give props to that.
That's impressive.
Uh, yeah, I didn't think Andrew Touchy would ever get knocked out that quickly. Thoughts on this one?
He's a big guy, cuts in a reasonable amount of weight. I don't know. You know, it's just kind of one of those perfect punches. Brito loads up on it, not too much, just a good amount. He's kind of talking the other way. It's just a good time to catch someone. Shit for my picks. Shit for Feely, but Brito had a lot more to get out of this fight. And even though we didn't really get to see the two match up their skills at all, I guess this is the more interesting kind of outcome of all possibilities. Let's be interesting to see if they kind of give Brito a big jump forward or if he has to keep slowly fighting his way up. I think they're probably going to give him an opportunity. I imagine he's going to be near the top of their list if anyone falls out of a big fight at 45 or 55. That would be my guess.
Yeah, I could see that. It's so stacked though for me. Even outside the top 15, there's just so many guys. And somebody like Dawoodu might be a fun fight. The Mean Hakim. I'd want to see that.
Big step up. That would be a fair reward for dispatching a guy like Feely immediately in the first.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good one. Not ranked, but one of those fights you win. You can't not too far away from looking at the ranked guys. No,
Yeah,
so
not
far
that long
away.
ago, Dawoodu was right there with Arnold Allen, and now Arnold Allen is top 10, almost top 5.
Yeah,
Something like that. We
with
need to
pretty
Where
much.
is he?
Well, pretty much. Yeah, and if the Calvin Cater fight ends up happening at UFC London 2, 2022, which I'm very excited about, and we will talk about later, he could be in the top 5. It's funny, isn't it? It's like you can spend, particularly in these deeper divisions, you can spend so much time, like 5 or 6 fights just to get ranked. But then once you get ranked, it can literally be 2 or 3 fights, and you're right there in the mix if you win the right fights.
Yeah, always. And the right fights are never the best matchups. So, you know, it's even more impressive. Even if someone is kind of getting brought along by the UFC, if they actually go on a serious tear into title contention, they usually have to beat someone real. I mean, Jesus Christ, even Darren Till. I know he caught Cerrone at like a good time to be fighting Cerrone, but that still meant something when he knocked out Cowboy.
Yeah, agreed. Well, listen, Cowboy's always Cowboy, man. It's only really, I'd say, his latest losing streak where you kind of look at it and feel like, this is done.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move down. Let's talk about Grant Dawson because we love a bit of Grant Dawson on this show. I did not realise this when we did the pick show. He's moved to ATT and away from James Krause, which
Yeah.
is a surprise. Some guys do well in different looks at different places, and he's certainly going to a good place to train. No question about that. Great
The
coaching
way
there.
he talks about it, though, does give me off. It kind of throws off kind of Ian Gary vibes, you know? He said, I felt like something had been missing for a long time. I'm getting like world class coaching now at ATT. I don't know. James Krause is an intense guy. I don't know if they maybe just had a little fallout, but interesting the way he was talking about it. Didn't seem to be. It felt more like a Roy Keane, Alex Ferguson kind of moment. If you don't know who they are, like and subscribe this, and then go Google it. Don't be lazy. I'm not going to tell you.
I know what you're saying, and I'll tell you why I think it's a real shame is that KGD was, as I just looked for my lights, give me a second, there we go. KGD was his boy. I mean, that was in many ways, his student that he was looking at going, this is my protege. This is that young guy who's going to fight the way that I like to fight, intelligently, well-rounded, all this kind of stuff. And it is a shame when those guys don't work out. But what I would say is that I don't think he's gone to a bad place. I think ATT is as good a gym as you could possibly hope to train at. It's not an easy gym. They've got a lot of fighters. You're not special if you go there. Certainly not a Grant Dawson. He's going in and being one of the less important names, not one of the big names there. Whereas maybe at Glory there was a bit more kind of, fanfare around him and focus. But all you can say is first fight with the new system, he passed with flying colours. He looked excellent against Jared Gordon. And Jared Gordon is good. He's not an easy guy to out-grapple.
No, exactly. Grant Dawson, his strength is being a good all-round MMA fighter and being hella strong, even at 55. And for him, I knew his stand-up power had transferred well over to 55. But being able to out wrestle a guy like Flash is fucking impressive at 55. This guy is a big fucking lightweight. I don't care if he just moved up from 45. He is a big fucking lightweight. There's 2 or 3 fights now at 55 for the UFC.
I think 3.
Yeah,
I think so. It was Santos' first. I think Santos. Yeah, Santos, Glenn, and now
first,
Gordon.
And then Glenn, now Flash.
Well, so let's be honest as well. Leonardo Santos for your first lightweight fight. That is not an easy fucking booking.
Oh no. He broke Santos' streak, right? Something like a 10-fight win streak, something crazy.
Yeah. I mean, Santos was 40 years old, but still, credit where credit is due.
Doesn't matter. Exactly. Sly's not with us this week, so we don't have the stats to hand. That's not our fault, that's his. So
we will make do. We're going to have to deal with him for a few episodes coming up. But we will persevere. Hopefully with better quality. Grant Dawson's good. Bounces back really well after the Ricky Glenn draw. Looking good with the new system. I hope it works out for him long term. I don't know. I can understand why you want to get different looks. And I do think there's something to that. I just don't understand why you can't do, I'm not saying it worked out for Garbrandt. But when Garbrandt went across to train with Mark Henry, it wasn't viewed as there's no shit talking of alpha male. He still much said, guys, I still train with them. I just wanted to kind of get a new experience. I just don't understand this kind of burning your bridges thing. Maybe I don't know if it's the fighters sometimes. I know gyms can be quite sensitive about guys training elsewhere. It
was subtle. Yeah, I haven't Googled to see if James Krause has come out and said anything in response. It was an out and out throwing shade, but it didn't feel very respectful. It felt about as professional a kind of sort of diss as he could give. I think anytime you're saying, if you're talking about how you weren't getting enough of something, you need to try something new. You can say, I need to get some different looks in. I need some different training partners, some different coaches to really kind of open up my game. Or you can leave and say, I think his exact words were I thought I was losing enthusiasm for the sport. But it turns out I was just missing some things. There's just some things I hadn't been getting for a long time. And that's what I'm able to get at ATT. He might be specifically talking about rounding out his game. But it feels like a very deliberate way to word it. I think there's a bit of an Ian Gary vibe. I'm trying to be a contrarian. The internet loves this shit. It's just a conspiracy, though. I have no proof.
Yeah, what I'd say as well is that there is an equal number of guys that have moved gyms and had it work out for them. And there's the guys that have moved gyms and it's not worked out for them. Time will tell. We'll see if it's the right decision. For now, he's the winner. Still undefeated at lightweight. Still looking good. Jared Gordon, he had a tough out. He'll bounce back.
Yeah.
Moving down. What was our next fight up? As I bring up my fight list on my phone, we had. As I've clicked off to look at Conor
So it
McGregor's
was
super yacht.
Darren Elkins against Tristan Connolly.
This was a great fight, and pretty much went as we predicted. I mean, not a lot else went as we predicted on this card, but we got this one right. You can't finish the guy, man, unless you've got Cub Swanson kind of power, and you're not going to outgrow. You're not going to sub. I don't think he's ever been subbed. I don't think he ever will be subbed. Such a beast. Not ever a top level guy. Not one of these people that has any standout physical traits other than just cardio, willpower, and an unbreakable chin, mixed in with pretty decent grappling.
Yeah, one sub was to Charles Oliveira, so it's almost like no subs.
I don't count that.
If you want to be fair.
Either way, okay. He's had one sub. It's the fucking Charles Oliveira. The guy's a beast. And Tristan Connolly, I didn't realize, man, he's 36.
Well, yeah, I mean, the guy only got a contract because he came in. He agreed to fight Michel Pereira at fucking welterweight.
And Pereira missed weight for that.
Yeah, who tweeted? I can't remember now, but they summed it up perfectly. You can't out damage the damage. You can't out Darren Elkins. You can't try and do his game better than he does it, because it will not work out for you. But what else could Tristan do? No. I suppose I thought he might try and lean on the trying to find a submission and try and find some top control, but he just couldn't even get close. He was whiffing on everything. Darren.
He had his moments in round 3, but he didn't have enough time to do any damage.
Yeah.
Listen, Darren's the man. I mean, he's had more featherweight fights now than Max Holloway, which is absolutely fucking crazy. And he's got a really decent record for where you think he kind of stacks up. If you actually look at his record, it's really fucking good. He hasn't lost that many fights in the UFC. And the guys who have beaten him are fucking good. Even a couple of the ones that I don't think are high level that have beaten him, I think he was unlucky in the Nate Landwehr fight. I definitely think Elkins won that. So the guy is a tough out for anybody. It's great to see him still winning. I'm very nervous about what his life will be like after fighting. I'm not going to lie, but that's not my business.
He don't talk good no more. He don't talk good no more.
I don't think he talked good back then.
But it's been getting worse.
That's not good. That's not good. I hope he's enjoying himself. I hope he's setting himself up well. I really do.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Meerschaert. Let's talk about Jotko. I love Meerschaert. It was hard to see this broken, but it's the sub. That's what he's got. If he can't get the sub, he's not going to win the fight on the feet. He starts badly. I thought the bad start cost him. And I mean, Jotko's not bad. He's not electric, but he's well-rounded. No. He doesn't do anything stupid. No. This wasn't fun. I didn't like watching this hungover.
Well, obviously, I want to win the picks every week, so that part of it kind of sucked. But the fact that I went for GM3 made this a lot more fun, because the boy's got heart. He kept chasing the submission the whole time, working the butterfly guard. There were moments when I half-heartedly believed he might be able to progress to something, but yeah, like you say, Jotko's not that bad. Neither of them are great. We knew that classically Jotko was a little better. Maybe reached a bit on the GM3 pick, but god damn it, it just felt right picking him. And seeing the fight play out that way, I'm like, it's still an alright fight on a really great card. I love the heart from GM3. Yeah.
How much should not have.
Let's cry over spilt Meerschaert.
True. Well, listen, man. I didn't think this fight would be as tough as the Muradov fight, and I do think that if Jotko was to fight Muradov, it would not work out very well for Jotko. But that's maybe stars make fights. What I'd say about Jotko is he doesn't put himself in particularly on the ground. He seemed very well prepared. He knew where he was safe. He knew what not to do. The guy got the win, man. You can't take it away from him.
No, no.
Okay, let's run through these prelims. Prelims had some really good fights as well. I watched them out of sequence, though. That's why I'm not 100% sure on all of the orderization. So let me just bring it up on my phone one more time.
Oh, so
kicking off prelims. Oh, well, Lockheed. Alexander Romanov has lost a huge amount of fat since his last fight. He looks like the same guy, if you combine the haircut. He looks like a pretty terrifying heavyweight who can still take you down and throw you all over the octagon, which is very scary. This was not a fight. This one-way mauling for as long as it lasted.
Well, that's why it's been lock of the week 2 weeks in a row. Chase Sherman will almost certainly be cut by the time I Google Chase Sherman. Fair play, Chase. He always does what's asked of him. But Romanov is a legit prospect, and Chase Sherman, 2 weeks ago was technically cut.
Yeah, nothing more needs to be said. So let's talk about Little Figgy. Little Figgy or Big Figgy? I know he's the bigger Figgy, but is he the younger Figgy?
He's the younger Figgy. He's Little Figgy.
The younger Figgy got a nasty knee. What's that? 2 knee bars in the last 3 weeks? When was the Puelas fight? A lot of knee bars, man. A lot of knee bars. You got to watch out for it. And that one was nasty. And
that one was avoidable again.
Yeah. That's why you don't see a lot of.
Well, when Figgy attacked the arm, and De Silva, basically couldn't get like both arms out or both arms in. There was a moment there where he was kind of given half guard, and I thought if he worked from there, that was actually going to be a much safer, much smarter position to then land in top control, side control, maybe progress the full mount. Instead, he gets greedy, spins around to a very, very high kind of north-south position, and really just fucking gives him his leg. It was just he seemed very confident coming in, but clearly it doesn't matter how confident you feel in before the fight. The jitters are real. Makes a schoolboy error. A little overexcited. I didn't win the picks this week. I don't know if that's showing through. I'm a little bitter.
I know I've done better than you. I just don't think I've done better than Sly, which we will find out his picks when he's back for the pick show. He's currently out working with balls, which, and didn't send his picks in either. So we are slightly in the dark on that one. But just from my kind of general memory, I'm pretty sure he won, which is heartbreaking. That's not Figgy's business. He doesn't give a fuck about that. What he cares is that he bounces back, gets a win, moves on, looks good, and not much really more needs about that. My phone's just died, so can you do the rest of the fights in order, please? I think the next one was Brian versus Levy.
No, next, and I maybe fight. Well, actually, no, the main event's the fight of the night, but certainly an early contender for it. Gabe Green against the White Lion, Johan Mornes at welterweight. Jesus Christ, I thought Gabe Green was out of this one. I don't know how he hung on.
That first round knockdown was not looking good for him at all. The fact that he turned it round and then put it on him the way he did in that second round against Linus, you can't take it away from him. Looked like an absolute monster.
Never underestimate body work. Great finish, great comeback. Great win. Get excited when Gabe Green fights people. That's
what
2 in a row. Phil Hawes. No, Phil
Hawes.
Rowe. Hang on. Let me just click on it. Keep it simple.
What was the issue he had with his vision? They said he'd had some issue with his peripheral vision or something like that. He'd had an operation on it.
I don't know. I must have missed that. I wasn't aware. Not great, was it?
It was some weird issue with his peripheral vision. I can't remember. They were talking about it on the broadcast, but they said he just had an operation to correct it. So this was apparently him with even better sight than he had. But I couldn't quite remember what they said the issue was. The problem is that on Saturday I was playing poker with somebody who was talking about having a peripheral vision issue. So I really can't remember due to my actions on the Saturday evening after the poker and before these cards. I can't fucking remember what, whether it was I'm remembering a peripheral vision thing from Saturday night poker or from the fights and what the details were. I just remember that two different things were mentioned to me in two different mediums.
All
But
right.
yeah, bounced back, got a good win. Next fight was that Brian versus Levy.
That's right.
This was a really good fight as well.
Yeah, and you want to talk about having a good guard. Levy, his head movement, his guards, again, like Cheeto, very impressive. Took a lot of shots, but didn't really eat him clean. I was impressed. I thought Breeden was gonna maybe really just kind of take control of a couple of the moments of those fights and really just kind of bully Levy out of it. But he kept coming back, kept finding a way to take Breeden down. I was impressed with both guys. What did you make of this one?
I thought it was a really good fight, really good back and forth. I thought both guys had moments. I'm impressed that Levy managed to dig in because about kind of three quarters of the way through the second round, he looked really, really tired. And I didn't think he was. I wasn't sure if he was going to get finished, but I thought the pendulum was going to completely swing in Brian's favour. And
Yeah.
it didn't. He was still able to find his little moments, get takedowns, push for takedowns, land when he could. The hooks were landing really nicely. And he showed a lot of heart. I thought this was a really good win. But, I mean, take nothing away from Breeden as well. I thought he did as much as he could have done. They had a really good fight. Just didn't quite, if a couple of those takedowns don't land, I think the fight swings in the other direction. But it's the nature of the game.
Nice, and there's just the final fight or the first fight of the night. If you are watching it chronologically, what a boring way to do it. You should always time travel. Gina Mazzani
I did not see
against
this fight.
Shanna Young.
Only fight I didn't see on the card.
Good fight. Shanna Young, was winning. I wouldn't say comfortably, but clearly, and then finishes Gina in the second round. Great way to kick off a fun card. Don't know what else more to say other than I got the pick wrong. Very very.
What was the finish
frustrating.
like?
Honestly, I can't remember that well. I'm kind of trying to think back to it now. I'm not gonna lie, people. I had some edibles today. It's a bank holiday in the UK, so I had edibles. What do you want from me?
Well, it was a very entertaining card. Really good fights. I was able to not find out the rules on most of it, although I had a feeling that Vera won the main because I'm subscribed to Weasel MMA's channel, and he usually does a breakdown of what happened in the main event. And I didn't see the result. All I saw was the word masterclass, and then which looks like Marlon Vera's knee. So I assumed it was Vera that won. But then obviously when the first round half happens, I'm watching it thinking last one wrong. There's a fucking masterclass by Rob Font. And then obviously I realized kind of in what direction things were going to go. Very entertaining. And of course, this was not the only action that we had. PFL 2 was on, was it Friday night the PFL was on? Or Saturday?
Shit. I want to say it was on Thursday.
Or Thursday.
I think I originally
Thursday.
claimed Wednesday. I think it was actually on Thursday. May well have been Friday. I watched it, the highlights, today. So.
Yeah, some entertaining fights. Kyle Bozniak obviously used to fight in the UFC. He had an outstandingly entertaining fight against Zabit Magomed Sharipov back in the day. He's in the PFL now. Unfortunately, did not get the result. But some really good finishes. That what was his name? Gazapetta? Fucking oh god, that's not right.
I'm gonna
Gapaloni?
bring it
Oh
up.
fuck, I just saw it. I
Pretty.
just
It
saw
was
it. I don't have it in front of me.
Kyle was fighting Bubba, Lochnan, won. Wade beat Palmer. Wade looked pretty good fighting out of both stances. Kid can wrestle, kid can jab, kid can switch it up. Pretty impressive.
Who are the heavyweights in the main event? What was the
Uh,
guy's name? Begins with a G.
I can't
If you've
remember
got it
who
up
the
in
main
front of
event
you.
was, but heavyweight of the night for me was Henan Fajeda. That guy is an absolute fucking athlete. I don't know if you've seen him do his backflip, but the guy's like 6'5", 6'6", fucking huge. Does a backflip like he's oh my god, why have I forgotten his name? That spiky haired lightweight from the UFC that went over
Have you got
to
you've got the PFL fight list in front of you now? Yeah.
no, sorry, I'm still bringing it up while I try to think of Super Sage Northcutt.
So I'm drawing a blank. I literally just watched these highlights like just before we started recording, but I did not commit the fucking main event heavyweight into memory. Absolute beast of a human. You're gonna tell me in a second because you're bringing it up.
Yeah, sorry, it's just coming up very slowly. It's not fucking coming up at all. Phil Vedetta, what are you thinking?
Yeah, thinking. I can't let this go. I've got to know who this thing. Looking it up myself.
Capalozza.
Gabaloza. Gabaloza.
Capalozza.
Scary. Are you sure?
Yep, Bruno Capalozza. Are you thinking of earlier on the main card?
Capalozza. Sorry, I misread it. I misread it as a G. C. It is a C. That is my fault. That is my fault. Very stupid. Very stupid. His knockout was impressive. D'Elia's knockout was seriously impressive in the second round in one of the other heavyweight fights on the card. I tell you what I don't like about PFL though. I don't like the point system. You're gonna have to sell me on why the point system is not stupid.
Um, well, it does mean that, you know, if you do kind of go for a riskier strategy, open yourself up to being caught, but go for a first round finish, then you can get enough points that in the second sort of week, you know, if things have kind of gone your way, you only need to get like a win. You can just lay and pray for like 3 rounds just to get an easy win. I don't know. It just kind of helps put you in control a little bit. It also means that even if you kind of lose your first fight, you could still potentially get through by getting a first round finish. It just kind of rewards action, and as long as it's consistent and everyone's fighting to the same rule set, I think it's an interesting thing. Particularly when, you know, you
No,
lose the elbows.
but not everybody's fighting the same people.
No.
So if you end up with just a much harder road and you still win all of your fights because you're fighting harder people, you can't win by finish. You have to win by decision. You end up getting punished for actually having to fight a higher level standard of competition. Whereas the people that fight the easier fights are more likely to finish them and then not necessarily be the best guys, but just happen to have a favorable matchup.
Potentially. The other thing though is a lot of people end up having to pull out of their fights because of like training injuries or not recovering from the previous fight. So I'd say overall it does end up being kind of reasonably fair, and it does kind of mean that even if you come in as an alternate or even if you lose your first fight, you know that if you go for a first round finish, you may well be in the mix. So
Why not just bracket it off into a point where you can like different divisions of like 4 fighters, and all 4 of those fighters fight each other. You do 3 points for a win, 1 point for a no contest or a draw, and you only award 1 extra point for a finish, but it doesn't matter when it happens in the fight. so that you're
Yeah.
incentivizing a finish, you're giving a points bonus, you're not holding people back by styles, which might affect the fights, and each division basically you concede them and they fight each other. So there's no disparity about, oh, my opponent was harder than your opponent or anything like that. Everybody fights the same people, injuries allowing.
Two reasons as I see it. And I think that what they've got is more or less the best kind of compromise. First issue is you want to have X amount of fights across the season, and you want to spread that across a good amount of names with a reasonable amount of fights on these contracts. So having a 2-fight regular season where you make it more or less as fair as you can with the point system means that you can sign big names, which gets people interested in your tournament. But you don't have to sign them all to 6 fights, 7 fights, 8 fights, whatever, to try and make it fair across like a bracket and only have so many names in there. You can have a lot of names and everyone's signed to a 2 or a 3 fight minimum. Because, they still have people fight on the events that aren't, tournament fights. They have people come back in as alternates and things. So I think it just helps make it fairer for the fighters in terms of having like a good amount of fights on there. And good for them in terms of having the enough name value spread across the whole thing. And then the second reason just being injuries. So you want your winner to go through, I think it's 4 fights total across the year. It's still a lot of fights in a year. You don't have the elbows. It doesn't exactly make up for all the training camps, the weight cuts, and so on. It feels about right to me. I think it's about as fair as you can make it.
Yeah. I mean, really, my feeling from this is that I'm just not 100% sure tournament yearly kind of season format works for fight sports.
It's interesting, right? Because probably not. But then having your contract plus the $1 million tournament winner bonus incentive that Bellator are mimicking as well makes it interesting for the fans. It gives them a good selling point for the fighters. This is how they get, the Rory McDonalds, the Anthony Pettis, the Fabricio Verdums of the world. And it makes them kind of relevant. Because when they were World Series of Fighting, no one really gave a shit. And then they rebrand as PFL with the tournament concept. And, before they were kind of looked at as like a little higher than LFA. And now they're, just a little lower than like Bellator and 1FC. So they're moving up in the world. I can't fault them for it. I think they've made an interesting little niche. Same as like bare knuckle boxing. They're doing something a little different. I fucking love it. I don't love bare knuckle boxing anywhere near as much as I love PFL. But my point is, I think it's kind of cool. And I think it's about, as the concept would work, this is about as good as you can execute on it.
I'm a difference on both bare knuckle and PFL. I think a good example of this would be triad. I think sometimes if you're doing something that ends up a little hokey so that you can say that you're different, I don't know if that's necessarily the right approach to take.
Would
The
you say
highlights
PFL's
assault, it
hokey?
looks like there's some... Yes. I think it's stupid.
Because of the tournament format?
Because of the tournament format, because of the way that it favors a certain style of fighter, a certain style of aggressive fighter. I do not like the concession of saying that because of our format, we require the need to take away elbows to try and limit damage and cuts. I think that removes such a large focus of why we watch and why MMA exists in the first place. Go do a fucking kickboxing tournament if you don't want to get elbows in the face. And really, it just ends up feeling like they're trying to do this thing. And I wouldn't mind so much if their branding of this and the way that the fighters spoke about it, maybe this isn't what helped. I think Kyla Harrison has kind of ruined it for me to a certain extent, because they haven't taken this attitude of, hey, listen, we can't really compete with the UFC. They're doing their thing. We're just trying to do ours. There's been this real high horse, we're running this like a real sport. We have a season the way it should be done. We have playoffs the way real sports are done. And I just think, for fuck's sake, guys, get off your fucking arrogant little high horse. You are holding the only bankable name you've got that didn't come from the promotion to ransom because you know she is desperate to go to Bellator where she can have real fights that will get her a real reputation. But instead, you are locked in because Kyla Harrison is the only reason that a lot of people give your sport any legitimate credit. And Clay Collard, who has beaten some fucking good names so far. I will give that guy some credit. But I just think it's hokey, man. I just think it's hokey. And it's going to happen because fucking every fighter who used to fight is setting a bloody mini promotion now. Masvidal, Uriah Faber's got. I saw another fighter is setting up. I can't remember who it is, but we're getting a lot of these mini promotions popping up. So we're going to get some weird ass fucking rules.
Is going to be hitting the old Daniel Kinahan style speed bumps. But yeah, honestly though, I think a lot of it's cultural. That's just how American sports leagues operate, and that's how they sell themselves. You know, that's kind of what they have to say. It's just an American organisation saying an American thing. They've got a lot of good fighters. Shoeface is there. He's the returning middleweight champ. What did he got to light heavyweight? Shit, can't remember now. They've got a fair few like decent fighters, and you know, these fighters are choosing PFL. They're choosing to risk it. I think the idea of maybe being able to win $1 million on top of everything else is very attractive. I think it's good to have options for fighters to get paid. I like it a lot.
I like options. I like their particular option. I like the pay. I like the Miller reward. That's cool. That is very cool. But I would question, at what cost is that coming to? Like, if we were to really peek behind and see the contract, how much are these guys actually getting paid? I'm sure Ronald's on a good contract. I'm sure Kyler's on a good contract. If you factor in the $1 million and how much money they're actually making, I wouldn't be surprised if 90% of their fighters are getting more screwed than the UFC fighters.
Oh, they won't be getting screwed as badly as the UFC. Also, they'll be able to. They do their sponsors as well, so they get the sponsorship money. But
okay, yeah,
I imagine their contracts will be better than any of them would be getting equivalent in the UFC. Some of them at some point in their career may have been making a bigger contract in the UFC, but certainly they won't be getting that now. The idea of potentially being the winner in what everyone views as a kind of shallower pond is the big incentive. So they know that's why it's done that way. If you win it all, you're going to make way more money than you would have anywhere else, even if like that organisation made a huge mistake with your contract and paid you twice what you're worth. And if you don't, you're still going to be making more than you would in the UFC, maybe less than in Bellator, but you're probably going to be having slightly easier fights. You know how many fights you're going to be fighting maximum this year if it all goes well, and you understand the stakes. So I think it's an easy sell for some guys. And yeah, honestly, they might not be making the most amount of money. They would be making more money in, say, Bellator, but they would not be making more money in the UFC. The UFC are trying to pay them less, and they don't have that $1 million at the kind of carrot to throw out at the end.
Okay, I'll give it that. Well, I understand that, but it's still not. I'm not on board yet. I'm not on board. I think that's the safest way to put it. I'm not there. They haven't won me over yet. Give it time. Let's see what happens. Let's move away from MMA very quickly because we don't want the show to go on too long. But I do want to touch on the boxing that happened over the weekend. There were a couple of cards, a couple of big boxing matches. Shakur Stevenson fought and defeated Valdez pretty comfortably, pretty dominantly. The fight I really want to talk about, the fight that I saw, the fight I forced Josh to watch highlights of, and the fight that got all of the media attention was in Square Garden. It was the unified lightweight women's title bout between the undisputed champ Katie Taylor and the 7-weight world champion Amanda Serrano, moving up from fate to take on the pound for pound number one, she herself being the pound for pound number two. These two women went to fucking war. absolute blood and guts war. It had everything. It had skill, it had technique, it had opposite styles. The forward aggressive southpaw against the stick and move in orthodox. Both ladies had their moments. Really, the fight came down to the first 3 rounds that were super, super close. But rounds 5 and 10, two of the best rounds of boxing that you will see, two of the best rounds of fighting that you will see all year. Josh, you watched the highlights. What was your thought from what you saw?
I fucking thought that Serrano had her out of the fight there in the fifth, for sure. That was. Was there about 40 seconds left, and I think the referee was about to step in, maybe. But shit, I don't know if Serrano kind of punched herself out a little bit. Watching the highlights, Taylor does amazing to come back in the sixth. I have not seen the whole fight. I can't tell you how accurate the scoring is. The judges had it reasonably different. Who do you think won this fight? Watching the highlights, you can't really tell, but it does look like Serrano did all the damage.
It's fucking hard to tell, man. Particularly the commentary team were 100% convinced that Serrano had won the fight. And it's one of these weird things. I mean, Serrano clearly takes rounds 4 to 6. I would say Katie Taylor very clearly takes rounds 7, 8, and 9. So there's 3 rounds in the bank guaranteed for either woman. It's really about how you score the first 3 in the last round. So there are people that had it 2-1 to Serrano. There were people that had it 3-0 to Taylor in the first 3 rounds. And I mean, really, it was a hard fight to score because I would say Katie Taylor was landing more volume. But it was really obvious that Serrano had a massive power advantage over her. And even the 5th, at the 10th, one of the judges gave the 10th round a 10-10 just because it ended with just standing in the middle of the ring for the last 20 seconds and just biting down and sweat each other, which you love to see at the end of the fight, giving everything they can. But even in those last moments, it looks like Katie was the one whose legs were buckling. And an interesting kind of thing I'd say with this, I mean, it's not a robbery. Like, I could see both women winning. I thought Serrano won, Laura won. A lot of UK people are obviously saying Taylor won. A lot of American people are saying they thought Serrano won. It's a fucking who knows. I think Taylor did well to come back. I think Serrano did punch herself out. Maybe she thought she had a comfortable lead and just went into don't do anything stupid mode. But great fight. We're going to get the rematch. They absolutely delivered. And it's delighted because it would have been a tough promotional sell if this fight was a really dull, damp squib with all of the highlights. The fact that they delivered on it, I think, is going to end up doing wonders for women's professional boxing. I think it's going to do well for their career. They're both going to get a massive rematch that they're going to be paid a huge amount of money for, most likely happening in Ireland. And it's great to see them getting paid because the women boxers have not been paid, certainly should be. I think Serrano for most of her career never got more than 10 grand as a world champion. We talk about US as being underpaid, but she's a 7-weight world champion. And it wasn't until 3 fights ago, I think she ever earned more than 10 grand for a fight. Let that sink in for you. The rematch is going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. And I'll say this as well. Credit to Jake Paul, man. He actually didn't act like a total imbecile during fight week. He just promoted it. I mean, he did do one stupid bet where he tried to bet $1 million on the result of the fight with Eddie Hearn, who accepted the bet, but then was quickly told that for very sensible legal reasons, he is not allowed to bet $1 million on the fighter that he is promoting when he has helped organize the judges and all this kind of stuff. So he had to withdraw from that bet.
That's a shame. Well, I guess when you're a promoter, or you're trying to be a promoter, they really kind of have you by the balls. You fuck around as an athlete. There's only so much they can say and do. Some commission somewhere will license you to fight, but if you want to be a promoter, in one of the biggest or most gloried kind of sports arenas in the world, you gotta mind your P's and Q's.
Pretty much. And listen, it was the one moment that I think Jake Paul let himself down in, because it was the one kind of suggesting that bet was the one moment that he took the attention away from the fighters and kind of made it a bit more about himself. And I think the benefit of this was that it was very much about that. I think it's going to do big things for women's boxing. The only problem is, and it's something that we do see in the UFC, but not to the same degree. This was a great fight because these are two women that have wiped the floor with pretty much everyone else that they fought. And I think the only issue is there the depth? Because we know that these two fighters can deliver, but if they try and sell us on some other people, is it going to be an entertaining contest? Is it going to be as good of a matchup? Or are we going to see a Valentina Shevchenko situation where just apart from one or two people, it's an absolute whitewash every other time somebody fights? I think that could end up holding it back in the long run. But it's cool to see people talk about it, man. I mean, even like my dad is very much, kind of on mindset of, if I've tried to get a women's UFC fight, suggest that there's a good title fight coming up, suggest this fight, his response is always, that's not what women should be doing. I don't want to see them beat the shit out of each other. And I hope that fights like this make people realize that you can get a lot of value and entertainment and from female athletes fighting, particularly in fighting, because I think that's where I think the female athletes showed the most amount of ability compared to the men. Let's be honest, Will's fucking terrible, but a top level of steel boxing, man.
No, there are some amazing female footballers. There's amazing female athletes in every sport, but you have more disparity because I think mostly women don't get pushed into sport as aggressively as men or as boys do when they're young. I think it's easier to make excuses for why you're not going to push your girl to train every week. People do tend to actively try to push their boys into sport a lot more culturally in most parts of the world. So yeah, naturally you have a disparity. There's less women doing it from a younger age. You have a smaller talent pool to kind of pull from. So one of the sort of issues sometimes with women's football, probably less so today, but certainly maybe 10, 15 years ago, is you'd have 3 or 4 ridiculously good players, spread across both teams, and maybe 5 or 6 that you kind of think really maybe shouldn't be there. But it's because some of the ones that are really good are really fucking good, and because they're pushing the sport, there's a lot of teams, but they're not getting paid enough for enough women to warrant trying this for a living. And there was just a disparity across the skill sets, even in the same fucking game across 2 teams. But there's nothing that women can't do in terms of sport. Unless they make blowjobs, get receiving blowjobs like a sport. Something very gender specific. You have to be pretty fucking abstract. There's nothing that women can't do as well. And if your complaint is that you feel like it's not as good today, it's yeah, fair fucking enough. Maybe be more encouraging then. Help get more young girls and women into fucking sport.
Or I didn't say women's footballers are terrible.
Oh, sorry.
I said women's football. I didn't say women footballers are terrible. I didn't criticize the athletes. I said women's football is terrible.
Yes,
I completely agree with you as to why.
The product is just damaged because there is a bit of a disparity in the skill sets. It's something that could be fixed.
Well, I feel like a lot of sports should look at the UFC because, and I know it's different, but we got the World Cup coming, and there was a lot of conversations when the women's national football team had that their lawsuit about being wanted to be paid the same as men. And the reality is their contracts were actually way better than the men's team. The main sticking point seemed to be around the percentage of the tournament winnings that you get. So your percentage of the World Cup revenue, which obviously is much higher for the men's World Cup than it is for the women's World Cup. I think it's literally a difference of, $360 million or something like that. I think maybe even more between the total earnings between one and the other. So the women's argument was, well, the men get a bigger chunk of this pie. And obviously the men's argument was, our pie is bigger than your pie. I think that in the same way as UFC events will have men's and women's fights, and rather than just saying we're doing boy cards and girl cards, which I think would result in way less people watching the girl cards and giving them a chance, and kind of like filtering and stacking them through men's fights. Things like the Women's World Cup in March should be on at the same time as the Men's World Cup. It should be done as one World Cup. Now, you can have it at different points, but if you bill it as one event with two different sections to it, then there's no argument about the money. All the money goes in together.
No, there's no argument about the money for the players for it to be divided. But because there's less tournaments, there's less bribes, there's less tickets, there's less TV, get less games, so less adverts. So FIFA get less money. So that's where the argument
Same number of
about
games.
The money's going to come in.
Same number of games.
But if they're putting it across the same amount of time, there's going to be less like marquee games. You know, the ones they get the most advertising revenue for. It's just they won't get as much money, and they won't because they have less tournaments. They have less people bidding on tournaments, so they're getting less bribes. There's less oil grease in the wheel that goes round. FIFA wouldn't like it. FIFA would like it if they could split it into a tournament every year. You know, they would like to just fuck around as much as they could. But your idea is very, very good. That's
what about
exactly
one than
how
the
it
other?
should be.
What about like do you have the Olympics, Men's World Cup, and then you get the Paralympics, and then you get like Special Olympics, Women's World Cup, but they happen one after the other. But it's all part of the same event. But you show up, you have the Olympics first, and then you have the Paralympics. Why can't they do that? It's still technically, I know I'm saying it's less tournaments and all the rest, but at least you're not having to squeeze everything into a small time. You just one and then the other. But it feels like it's all part of the World Cup.
They should do your idea. They should have one implemented World Cup. But I'm just telling you why they won't do it. And it's for shit reasons. That's how it should happen, though. That's a very good idea you had there. But yeah, the UFC, they're kind of very gender agnostic once they actually let women in. You know, Ronda Rousey sold a lot of pay-per-views. All they care is if you move the needle, then, you know, they'll profile you. You'll get prominence. You'll get the opportunity to, like, make some serious money. And if you don't, then it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a woman. You know, they'll just fuck you over as much as they can.
The other factor I think that comes into it is in mixed martial arts, women will train with men. Train at the same gym. They fight for the same length of time. I think all of these factors are things that hold some of these other women's sports back. So football, they play a full 90 minutes. But I don't know how often the women are training with other professional men. And I think it's something that really helps to propel the women's game, the women's sport forward much more quickly. We've seen this in mixed martial art, the speed of development with the women, and the level of skill and technique. They fight the same amount and they train with a lot of men. Obviously, they will spar mainly women, but a lot of women will spar men. They will train with other men. They will train as hard as the men. I think with women's football, it's very isolated away from any kind of professional men engaging. And I do think that kind of... that's why you get situations like the best women's team on the planet plays like a 15 boys team from a high school in Texas and gets beaten like 6-0 because they're not used to doing it. That would increase the level. I think moving away from the thing that annoyed me with the boxing, that should have been a 12-round, 3-minute fight. I see no reason why it's 2-minute rounds. Like, we know that women can fight 5-minute rounds because we every single week. It made no sense to me that this was a 10-round fight. And things like that.
What's the longest both women had fought before? I take it they've both done
10 rounds, 2 minutes. But here's what's crazy. They all train, like, I know this, Amanda Serrano was saying, like, there isn't a single boxer on it that trains 2-minute rounds in the gym. You all train for 3-minute rounds. But then the women are, and it's literally just this, we don't want them to get hurt. Just 2 minutes, just make it for them. And I think that discredits it. And I think that takes away from some of the excitement. You know, one thing I'd say about the Serrano-Taylor fight, I would have liked to see some of those rounds develop for that extra minute. see how they play out, let that cardio really get pushed. And we know that they can do it. Fucking women's tennis. How more people would be invested in the Saturday women's final at Wimbledon if they were playing 5 rounds, 5 sets even. Sorry, 5 sets in tennis. I think you end up discrediting the women, and then it becomes this argument that people can use for why they don't watch it. Oh, I don't want to watch women's tennis. They don't even do as much as the men. They only play 3 rounds. I've heard that all the time. And, even they would be saying that when they were watching the boxing on Saturday. And the fact that it doesn't happen in UFC, I think it's one of the things that really makes people give the women a lot of credit.
Yeah, yeah, because it's just equal. Biggest sort of differences you kind of get between the men's and the women's is that with the women's, it's so much harder to get any kind of limb submission. Just pound for pound, the
More
difference
flexible.
in flexibility is ridiculous.
Yeah, and there's other things that you realize as well, like, the speed. I mean, this was clearly in the Taylor versus Serrano fight, but, if I take again, sorry if you're watching this episode, I'm shitting, exposing and shitting on you a little bit, but I had my dad watch the Fury versus White fight, which was not a particularly interesting fight. It was a very impressive performance by Fury, but it wasn't like a particularly exciting fight. And my dad is going, "Oh, that was such a great fight. Nothing quite like it." And then you see this fight, and you see a bunch of other lower weight fights, and it's like, well, it's all well good saying that, but the heavyweights are fucking slow. Compared to the speed and perfect technique and balance and combinations and footwork of the lighter classes, it's not the same sport. So, anyway, that's my rant. That's my rant. I think there's no one, and they're never going to be as strong. Maybe they won't be strong or as powerful, or or be able to beat men, and they don't have to. They can fight just as long, and then they can be just as entertaining if you give them the chance.
Yeah, and actually, some of them are freakishly strong, and like we still get like the Jessica Andrades. It's like it's just as good. There's no drop off with like women's MMA. It's just.
I mean, we have got. I am as excited about Rose versus Esparza 2 as I am about Gaethje versus Oliveira.
Yeah, it's fair to say.
Although I do think Gaethje versus Oliveira will be a more violent. Moving away and rounding up with a little bit in, because we don't want this episode to drag on too long for you guys. News to touch on. We've got to talk about this. UFC is returning to London twice in 1 year, July 23rd. Aspinall versus Blake, rumoured as the main event. I think Allen versus Cater would certainly be a candidate. Paddy Pimblett and Molly McCann certainly on the card. Darren Till. Mokaev might return. Paul Craig could be on that card. Aside from the main event, what would be your other most... What other fight would you most like to see on the UFC London 2 card?
Oof. Hard to say. Shit, I don't know. You actually cut out a little bit while you were saying it. What was the main event?
Oh, sorry.
It's Bilal.
No, it's most likely going to be Aspinall against Blades. That's being rumoured.
Big fucking test. Jesus Christ. I don't think you can get more excited than that fight as a British MMA fan. That's not a cop-out. That is the biggest kind of test that you can give Aspinall outside of giving him an interim title shot right now against one of the remaining sort of top 5 contenders.
Well, see, Paris is also going to be having its debut event. UFC are going to come to Paris for the first time, and the main event being rumoured for that card is Cyril Gane again. See if you can guess it. Or maybe you already know it.
I don't know, is it a rematch?
No.
Not a rematch. I don't know, because I believe they're looking at Stipe John Jones for September. So it's got to be
Correct.
someone else.
Correct.
It's not not a rematch. So he's looking down a fair bit. I don't know. Oh, Tuivasa.
Tuivasa. Tai Tuivasa. So we've got our two favourite exciting young heavyweights, both having fights that on paper are fucking nightmares for them.
That's interesting. And is there any whisper of an interim title on the line? So I guess they're
That's
still
going to
really
Stipe.
looking hard at Stipe and John Jones for September. I
don't even think it's going to be that hard of a sell. Like, both guys want it. I think the only thing Jones said is that Stipe going to be at his full peak, ready to fight September. That's where he's going to be 100%.
The way they want to line it up, though, is they want the Stipe-John Jones fight happening first. And then if that falls apart, all the other fights are going to be a month or two behind. So that they can just push the interim title shot onto someone else. So that they've still got an active title there, champion there, in time for Ngannou to either get his fucking payday with the boxing clause or move on.
I disagree. Stipe versus Jones is a fight.
I was saying that's how they prefer to do it. That's why the Stipe Jones one was supposed to be coming a lot sooner. They're hating this. I'm not saying they're not going to do it, and that they might not kind of like. Well, obviously, Dana's going to hate having these fights happen, knowing that he's got to just bank on that Stipe John Jones one actually fucking happening. And
I disagree.
John can be a liability. Go on.
I think it depends when they book Paris, but assuming it's going to be somewhere in August, that's the fight that you say, okay, maybe a bit too close for the date for somebody to fill in it. Blades versus Aspinall, assuming that the winner does not take too much damage, that is 2 months separated from the September card that they'll likely do the interim title shot with Jones and Stipe. So I do feel that, like, if a Blades or an Aspinall was to win that, and the worst was to happen to one of the fighters for the September fight.
Sorry, I think you misunderstood. So what I mean is, because it's hard to sometimes get these fights to fucking happen, the way they want it is the interim title shot would be scheduled before any other kind of high profile fights within that division. It's not that they're worried about a turnaround time if someone has to fill in. It's just that if they could have their cake and eat it, they'd rather have Jones Miocic in, say, May, and then Aspinall Blades and Tuivasa gone booked for later dates, so that if anything did happen, they can then just say, okay, well, we'll move the interim title shot to this fight with these two fighters instead. And if we can fucking remake this fight, we remake this fight as an eliminator. You know, I've just kind of seen it when they book things kind of far out. Particularly with heavyweight and light heavyweight, I've kind of seen them kind of try and follow this sort of model, so that they've got like Plan B and Plan C. Obviously, Miocic has said he can't fight when they're trying to pressure him to fight in. He wants to do September. John Jones has said, I'm going to fucking wait until September. So I'm confident that they're going to book it. It's just until it happens.
Can I point out the flaw in your plan?
Go on.
John Jones would not fight a Steppen. Are you really telling me that John Jones is going to fight?
No. What I'm saying, all right. So let's say they have it booked for May, and for whatever reason Stipe pulls out, and they'll probably say to John Jones, "Do you want to fight someone else?" And he says no. They go, "That's great," because next month we've got Aspinall Blades, or 2 months after we've got Aspinall Blades, and what I'm going to do is that's now the interim title shot between Aspinall and Blades. That's what they like to have in their back pocket. If they've got more high-profile fights around the top 5, then they'll want to have, like... I'm trying to think of a good example. It's not a good day, it's an edible day.
Well, I know what you're saying, but sometimes you just have to look at a fight and say it's this, or we fucking wait, because otherwise it's not the same. For Jones to fight Stipe for an interim title fight, it is the undisputed greatest light heavyweight champion taking on the undisputed greatest heavyweight. That's something that you can chuck the interim title fight on else. And I know that they've done it before. But really, When they did it for the heavyweights last year, that was nothing more than a bargaining tool to use against Francis Ngannou, who himself was a new champion, pay-per-view draw in all fairness, not somebody that had that kind of leverage, certainly not somebody that's got the work and the legacy of these guys. I just think it's different. I know that Hunter Campbell is very, very quick to chuck in the stripping threats, this kind of stuff. A lot of that's actually more Hunter than it is Dana White, apparently, since he's taken over a lot of negotiation, and apparently he is that guy where it's just like, "Are you going to do what I say, or I strip you?" Like, he's got that Joel Silver in him.
You feel that. It's visceral. You feel that coming through. Well, the thing is, Ngannou's options up in December, right? They're gonna want to have an interim title, an interim champion before the end of the deadline, and the sooner the better for their negotiations as they're ongoing. Because, as stupid as it sounds, Ngannou's value as champion is somewhat diluted when there is also an interim title champion in the picture. And for the fans, if it is Stipe or John Jones, then it's going to get to the point that they're going to blame Ngannou as much as the UFC if he doesn't re-sign. And, ultimately that's just giving more fucking power and leverage to the UFC. Ideally, I would like to get to the end of the year with no interim title fight. Just to give Ngannou as much help as he can in securing what I think would be a fair contract. At least $1.5 million, if not $2 million, plus the opportunity to fight Fury in an exhibition bout.
I don't want that fight yet. Not necessarily for Ngannou, but I want Fury to fight AJ Usyk first. I feel like his work in real fighting, real heavyweight boxing, is not yet done. And considering that unless you let Ngannou have takedowns, there is no fucking way on planet Earth Fury. No fucking way. When those two were standing in the ring next to each other after Fury's fight, 6'5" Ngannou looked small next to Tyson Fury. There's no.
But he'll get paid.
Ngannou's never fought somebody. He'll get paid. He'll get paid a lot of money to get knocked out and embarrassed.
Yeah. And then Fury will retire.
Yeah, I need that fight to happen in a year. I don't need that this year. It'll be 2023.
I don't know when it's coming, but I think it's going to be Fury's next fight and maybe his last fight.
I think that he views that as an exhibition. I think Fury views that as something he does after he retires. I know. Okay. I don't believe him.
No more fights. That will be the next thing he does. That's what I reckon.
We'll find out. We're going to see. I would like my ideal situation: Jones versus Stipe. Francis fights a winner, gets his boxing clause in his contract. Fury fights Usyk, beats Usyk. Fury fights Ngannou. They both ride off into the sunset.
Yeah, it'd be great. I don't know if Fury's going to do it. I hope
time will tell. Well, we're going to find out. To answer the question I asked you, the fight I would like to see on UFC London is Arnold Allen versus Calvin Kattar. Or Paul Craig versus Anthony Smith, but only if it's 5 rounds as a co-main event. On that note, is there any sports or news or MMA that I have not covered you would like to bring up, Josh, before we bid these fine people adieu?
Tomorrow, which is actually probably going to be the same day this is actually finally uploaded, Bournemouth have Forest at home. If we win, we clinch automatic promotion. It's a little nervy. But yeah, fucking 2 games left in the season. Almost back to the promised land. Up the cherries in all departments.
And it's pretty much a similar story for Arsenal. We're trying to get back into the prime of Champions League. We are 4 games away. We have a 2-point lead, but we have to play Tottenham next Thursday, which will not be fun, and pretty much will decide everything. So nervy times as well. But we beat West Ham, and we beat Chelsea, and we beat Man United. Those are the games I was really nervous about, so anything's possible. Final thing I'll just say, congratulations to the Eagles for pulling off a hell of a draft. AJ Brown on a trade, thought that was damn good business. You wanted an experienced receiver, you got one. Brought in Jordan Davis, who's a beast of a tackle. And did you get rid of Jalen Reagor, or is he still there?
I don't believe we've traded him yet, but he's very much on the chopping block.
Get rid of him and it's your glorious. It's the best off-season you could have hoped for.
Yeah, pretty much. Done well in the undrafted free agents. Got Nakobe Dean in the third.
That's a hell of a pick. Can't believe you dropped to the third.
Hey, injuries. What injuries? We'll see. Anyway, man, I've definitely got to go now. But goodbye, Laurie.
Thanks for watching,
Dave.
everybody.
Like and subscribe.
Goodbye, Trifo. We'll see you next time. Peace out, guys.
All right.
Take care.